Good afternoon and welcome to the 5% Club Symposium. It's great that you've all found time in your busy schedules to join us this afternoon for what promises to be a great revelation on outcomes from our research and the reports that you've all individually received. We've got a full agenda, lots of research to go through, lots of findings to explore, and then take your questions in a panel discussion later this afternoon. It's a shame we can't all be together, but I'm hoping we can get together later in the year where we can get to discuss these things in more detail face to face.
It's great to be here today. Unfortunately, we couldn't all be in person, but hopefully we can be at our December event. So before we move forward onto our event today, I'm going to go through some housekeeping points. Your microphone and your camera will be off, but we really want to hear from you. We want lots and lots of questions, so please post these into Q&A and chat, and we'll cover these off later. We're filming today's event, so if any of your colleagues couldn't make it, we'll be able to share this with you. And before we move through the rest of the event, I wanted to show some films. A few weeks ago, more than 20 members volunteered to produce some sound bites for us, outlining why participating in the audit is so important to showcase everything they achieve in their emerging talent strategy. We're going to hear from them now.
At Graham, we're passionate about attracting young people into the construction industry. We have a proud record of investing in developing talent. Our membership of the 5% Club provides us with a collaborative platform to create meaningful earn and learn opportunities.
Balfour Beatty has been a member of the 5% Club since December 2013, and it's absolutely critical as a major recruiter of graduates and apprentices that we maintain that membership.
25% of our staff are either in or graduates of the programme, including 2 directors and several heads of department.
Talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't, which is why since 2017, we have been really working hard to create lots of pathways into our organisation.
As the world's most sustainable company, we continue to invest in our early, emerging and next generation talent pool, creating opportunities to step up and learn faster in an inclusive environment, building the knowledge, skills, behaviours and increasingly the mindset and attitudes to future-proof our workforce.
Whitehead currently have 18 apprentices in training at varying stages of the 4-year apprenticeship schemes in operation. The at-site, hands-on and further education college training provides invaluable paid employment to the communities in which Whitehead operate.
As a people-orientated, progressive business driven by our values, our offering is defined by our people. We know that our early careers is a great way to grow our own talent, so we put great focus on our graduate and trainee programmes.
As a specialist apprenticeship provider, skills development is everything we do and everything that we are. We grow our own to be the expert, be the customer and be the future.
We give them their first step on the career ladder and help them to get a qualification. And in return, they bring new ideas, they bring loads of commitment and perhaps most importantly, bags of enthusiasm.
At Siemens, we have a long-standing history of recruiting apprentices. They are a great way for us to turn today's talented early careers professionals into the experts we need tomorrow. We've got a broad spectrum of opportunities as part of our talent strategy, including graduates, interns, kickstart placements, university scholars, and a virtual work experience programme.
In order to meet our business objectives and achieve our cultural aspirations, we need to improve the diversity of our teams and think differently as an organisation. That's one of the reasons why we value and need to recruit young people.
At Kinetic, we work really hard to create a learning environment that inspires and stretches and supports, and we do this by providing rich experiential learning opportunities.
We simply have to work at being really good at developing people. Young, old, male, female, whatever colour or creed. Not soft, a high-performing, diverse team.
Apprentices are a vital part of our business at William Hare. They bring a fresh perspective, bags of energy and positivity, and help us fill our skills gaps in engineering. As a business, we see the huge value of investing in and developing young people from the start of their career and being able to offer permanent, high-quality jobs to young people.
Alongside investment in state-of-the-art machine tools, it's really important to recognise that it's not machines that make things and do business, it's actually people. And young people are key in our future plans for the business. So whilst we have the best equipment, It's very important we have the best youngsters to take us forward.
Birmingham is a young, diverse city. Our exceptional young, diverse talent plays an important part in making Birmingham a high-performing and skillful city where everybody matters.
At Lockheed Martin, we're proud to invest in the development of our talent. For our young people, an exciting career journey starts from the moment they join, with meaningful roles and real responsibilities which lead to exciting opportunities for career growth.
Early careers for us really is just opening up talent pools into our organisation.
Our apprentices form an integral part of our company's succession plan. It's great to identify and nurture their potential so they can step into future leadership roles within the company.
Our mission is to empower young talent to close the digital skills gap and help them win in the digital revolution. As a learning provider, we offer emerging talent a range of learning avenues, from apprenticeships to courses, skills boot camps, as well as our academy.
We've brought through a tremendous amount of young talent into the industry, and as a company, we are extremely proud to bring through, support and develop a large number of apprentices within our business.
And some great perspectives there from the participants in the 2021 Employer Audit. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Martin Burchell from Fliers Research, who was the Research Director on the Employer Audit for 2021. Martin's going to take us through the findings in more detail. Many of you have read the reports, but now Martin will bring it to life in this symposium session. Over to Martin.
Well, thanks very much, Mark. I'm Martin Burchell, Managing Director at Fliers Research, and we've been delighted to work with the 5% Club on this year's inaugural Employer Audit. Let me start just by explaining a little bit about how the research has taken place. We've been delighted that some 73 members of the 5% Club have taken part in this year's Employer Audit, coming from a whole variety of different employment and industry sectors, everything from construction through to technology, retail, professional services, engineering companies, chemicals and pharmaceuticals, banking and finance, transport, and the public sector. So a very broad range of different types of employers taking part in the audit. Now, each of the organisations who've participated completed a short questionnaire back in July, all about their earn and learn employment. So giving us details of the apprentices, the graduates, degree placement students that they were employing. And each of those questionnaires was then checked and verified by my team at Fliers Research. We did a follow-up telephone interview with each of the participating employers. Now, within the questionnaire and within the audit, we were looking at 5 key areas. So the first is what we're describing as employment. So what proportion, what percentage of employers' workforces are in earn and learn positions? So when we total up all of the apprentices and graduates and degree placement students who are employed by the employers taking part in the audit, what percentage of their workforce were represented by those earn and learn employees? Our second area is looking at breadth and balance, so whether or not employers were offering a variety of opportunities, different levels of apprenticeship, different types of graduate program, and other opportunities. Our third area is looking at inclusion and social mobility. So that was coming up with a diversity profile for the apprentices and graduates employed by the employers taking part in the audit. We looked at quality and we measured that in 2 ways. The first was looking at what happens to apprentices and graduates when they come off their training and development programs. Do they go on to permanent roles within the organisation? Or perhaps another training opportunity. And we also looked in detail at how quality is assured by the employers who took part in the audit. And then the final area was looking at future growth. Of course, so many employers have struggled over the last 18 months, all of the challenges thrown up by the coronavirus pandemic. So one of the things we were keen to see was were earn and learn opportunities affected by the pandemic? And if so, how are they recovering this year and next? So those 5 key areas together form this year's employer audit. So let's take a look at some of the results. And we're going to start by looking at the larger employers who took part in the audit. So out of the 73 who participated, 52 were larger employers, so with more than 250 employees in their workforce. If we look across those 52 organisations, there were 14 employers who had between 250 and 1,000 employees, but at the very largest end, there were 10 organisations who had over 10,000 employees. Now together, they employed over 600,000 employees. So that gives you a sense of just how significant the employers are who've taken part in this year's research. Now, in terms of the number of earn and learn employees, well, we can see there that the biggest group is somewhere between 101 and 250 earn and learn roles. But across all of the organisations, 48,000 earn and learn roles are present across those 52 employers, and that represents some 8% of their workforce. Now, one of the key outputs of the research is to find out individually, so employer by employer, just how many of those earn and learn roles there are within the workforce. So if we look at the 52 employers, and each of them are represented here by one of the bars on the bar chart, you can see the percentage of the workforce which are those earn and learn employees. So the good news is that 38 employers have more than 5% of their workforce as earn and learn roles. There's another 8 employers between 2.5% and 5%, and 6 organisations where the percentage of earn and learn employees is up to 2.5% of the overall workforce. But you can see there at the top end, we've got 3 organisations around the 20% mark, and then a good crop somewhere between 10 and 15%. So many organisations having a much higher percentage than the core 5% that the 5% club aims for. So what about the breadth and balance? What are the variety of opportunities which employers are offering in terms of their earn and learn roles? Well, across the 52 larger employers, almost all of them were offering apprenticeships, so 50 out of the 52. And the biggest grouping were the level 4 to 7 apprenticeships, so those at higher and degree level. 47 out of 50 employers offered those programs. 43 employers offering advanced apprenticeships, and 33 offering level 2 intermediate apprenticeships. 45 employers had graduate programs, and we define a graduate program as a formal training and development scheme, typically lasting somewhere between a year and 3 years, that graduates go on to when they leave university. 33 employers had degree placement students, so those are opportunities for university undergraduates, typically as part of a sandwich degree course, typically the placements lasting either 6 months or 12 months. And there were 21 employers offering other paid earn as you learn roles in 2021. So a very broad spread, and it's interesting that there were 31 out of the 52 employers offered apprenticeship programs and graduate programs and degree placement student opportunities as well. So offering all 3 of those main earn and learn roles. If we look at the total number of opportunities that were available at the employers who took part in the audit, we can see here that there are over 37,000 apprentices at the 52 employers. The biggest grouping are level 2 apprenticeships, over 16,000 roles there, nearly 14,000 at level 3, and some nearly 7,500 at levels 4 to 7, so higher in degree apprenticeships. Just over 8,000 graduates employed by the employers taking part in the audit, just over 1,000 students on degree placements, and around 1,200 other roles for this year. So together, over 48,000 opportunities in earn and learn roles for employees at these organisations in 2021. If we look in detail at the number of apprentices employed, we can see that the biggest group is somewhere between 51 and 100 apprentices, and across the whole sample, there are 5 employers who have over 500 apprentices. Now, I should point out there is one organisation who's taken part in the employer audit who does have over 25,000 apprentices. So, of course, they're a very big part of these results. If we look at the number of graduates employed, well, there are more employers with fewer than 50 graduates and smaller numbers who are taking on the larger numbers. So it means that the median number taken on for graduates is 45 graduates per employer. So what about inclusion and social mobility? Well, we wanted to test out what level of information do 5% Club members have about the apprentices and the graduates that they employ. Now, the diversity we're looking at is covering 6 key areas: so gender, age, ethnic background, sexuality of employees, whether they have disabilities, and social mobility. Now, it was interesting, out of the 52 major employers who took part in the audit, 43 were able to provide details about the gender of their apprentices. So the balance there, 80% male, 20% female, less than 1% were non-binary. So the majority, you can see there, male apprentices. 39 employers had information about the age of their apprentices, and the biggest group in there, you can see 65% are aged between 19 and 24, but a quarter of apprentices at least 25 at the beginning of their apprenticeship. 31 employers recorded the ethnic background of their apprentices, and the median result there is that 10% of apprentices are Black, Asian or minority ethnic. In terms of identifying apprentices with learning difficulties or disabilities, just 13 employers were able to provide data on that, the median result being 4%. And then fewer still, only 7 employers able to offer data about the sexuality of their apprentices, and just 6 knew whether their apprentices were from a low-income family. So the results give an overall profile, but we just need to be cautious that for some of those latter results, we are basing it on very small numbers. And a common comment made by employers taking part in the audit is that they are working hard to try and collect this information going forward, and there may well be additional information available in future audits. So if we look at the diversity profile for graduates, bearing in mind 45 employers this year are running graduate programs, 39 of those 45 provided data about the gender of their graduates, and the balance here quite different to what we've just seen for apprentices: 64% male, 36% female, and just under 1% non-binary. 30 out of the 45 employers were able to identify the ethnic background of their graduates, and the result was 21% with Bain. Just 14 employers had details about learning difficulties or disabilities, the result being that 2% of graduates had learning difficulties or disabilities. Only 4 organisations were able to provide details of whether or not their graduates were from low-income families, but for those who did, the median figure was 16%. And just, let me just check, I think it's only around 4 employers able to provide details on sexuality as well. Of course, leaving university, graduates are typically aged 21 or 22, so the majority of graduates in that 19 to 24 bracket, but 1 in 3 leaving university perhaps 2 or 3 years earlier, so age 25 plus when they're on the graduate programs. So our 4th area is looking at quality. One of the key things we were keen to find out is what happens to apprentices and graduates when their training comes to an end. So firstly, these are the completion rates for apprenticeships. There were 6 employers out of the 52 who took part in the audit who had 100% record. So all of their apprentices successfully completing their apprenticeships. And you can see that the figures for other categories very high indeed. So there's another 28 employers where at least 80% of apprentices do make it through to the end of their apprenticeship. Just 4 employers, and their success rate was less than 70%. And then if we look at those who go on to permanent employment, similarly very high figures as well. So many employers able to find roles for their apprentices when they go on to either a further apprenticeship or into a permanent role. So in terms of completion rates for graduates, these are equally impressive. 10 out of the 45 employers said that 100% of their graduates completed the programmes, and very high numbers went on from other organisations as well. So just 4 employers reporting that less than 70% of their graduates completed their training. And in terms of those who go on to permanent employment, again, some very high figures. So you can see there well over 3/4 of those taking part in the audit had at least 80% of their graduates going on to further employment. And then the final section was looking at future growth. So we wanted to check just how many apprentices and graduates have been recruited over the last 12 months, so taking the academic year up until the end of July 2021, versus recruitment plans for this current recruiting season, taking us through to the summer of 22. So if we look at the numbers who were recruited between 2020 and 2021, over 17,000 apprentices, with the highest numbers level 2, followed by level 3, and then the higher and degree apprenticeships. 3,600 graduates employed and recruited over that time, and 1,400 degree placement students. Now, the good news is the targets for 2021-2022 are higher in each category. So we can see there that over 20,000 apprenticeships, more than 4,200 graduates, and nearly 1,700 degree placement students. So in each case, an increase year on year, coming to a total of around 15% more earn and learn opportunities for the year ahead compared to the recruiting season that's just finished. So let me try and draw all of that together for the larger employers. 52 took part in the employer audit, which was a fantastic total for the first year of the research. Their combined workforce, over 600,000, of whom 48,000 are in earn and learn roles. So that means 8% of those taking part in the research had 8% were in earn and learn positions. 38 employers, more than 5%, were in earn and learn roles. And if we look at the total number of opportunities, well, 37,600 apprentices, 8,200 graduates, and over 1,000 degree placement students. In terms of diversity, well, we saw that 80% of apprentices are men, 10% are Bain, 65% are typically aged between 19 and 24, and 1 in 10 are from low-income families. Compare that profile with the graduates, well, 64% are men, 21% Bain, 67% in the category 19 to 24 years, and 1 in 6 are from low-income families. But as you remember, not all employers were able to provide details for their diversity markers. So that's an area where some of the results are based on small samples. And as we've just seen, the completion rates for apprentices and graduates are very high, with many of those going on to permanent employment with the employers. And the really good news is that it seems that earn and learn recruitment at the 52 large employers who took part in the audit is set to rise in 2021 to 22. So that's a sea of facts and figures and data. I'm delighted that we're joined by 2 of the employers who've taken part in the employer audit, just to help us understand what the employment of earn and learn roles is really about. So for our first guest, I'm very pleased to welcome Karima Kandakar. She's the Head of Skills and Emerging Talent at Thames Water. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
And let me start by saying thank you also for taking part in the employer audit. You're one of the 52 larger employers who've taken part in this year's research. A workforce of over 7,000 staff at Thames Water, and at the time of the research, nearly 190 apprentices and graduates. So just give us a sense of what those roles are about and the sort of opportunities that Thames Water offers.
Absolutely. I mean, the business has gone through a lot of change over the last year, really investing in wanting to bring apprentices and graduates into our workforce to really create a diverse workforce that's reflective of the communities we serve. So about a year ago, we had about 20 apprentices starting on an annual basis. It's great to see that that's grown in that short amount of time. We've moved for about 3 standards and qualifications to over 23, offering level 2, level 3, level 5, right up to degree level. So a real variety of opportunity.
And clearly with 20 odd different standards, you're not just recruiting for perhaps engineering or technical roles. It sounds like a much broader selection.
Absolutely. We are looking at technical frontline, but also things like digital scientists, data scientists, and also quantity surveying at degree level. So we've got some back of house roles, some front of house roles, and some technical roles. So, a real variety of opportunity available.
Now, one of the challenges for all apprenticeship employers is, of course, finding the right talent for some of those fairly specialist niche standards that you're looking for. How difficult is that to do?
We don't want to set people up for failure, so we're very mindful with some of those standards that we do require people that have got a strong academic background, but we're also really challenging to ensure that the providers we're working with that deliver these qualifications are able to support apprentices with additional wraparound. So we've signed up to a number of commitments this year, such as Bound the Box, working with care leavers, and a number of other commitments. So we're really reaching out to our local communities, to our local colleges, to our local charities, care leaver groups, etc., to find these individuals, ensure that we can give them the right wraparound support. So part of that is really tapping into, diverse young people in our communities, but ensuring we give them the support for them to be successful.
And how do you decide the balance between graduates and apprenticeship roles? Because obviously, both are very large talent pools, but lead to different opportunities, within different organisations.
So I think we're going through a change, if I'm honest, at the moment. The graduate programme at Thames Water has been running for the last 4 to 5 years, quite a stable programme. Apprenticeships and the growth of apprenticeships is very new for the business. And what we're really trying to do is create a parity of esteem between the two. They've been run very separately before, and we haven't offered degree apprenticeships in the past. So the next year really is about us creating a parity between the two, ensuring that our degree apprentices and our graduates can work alongside each other. And we're just working through to understand what's the end goal for these individuals coming in. Is it to come into technical roles, or is it to come into sort of more frontline managerial roles?
Fantastic. And you talked about the growth that's happened already just over the last 12 months. Obviously, across the country, everybody's still recovering from the pandemic. Are your plans to expand your recruitment in the next year?
Absolutely. Like I said, we've grown our apprenticeship offer in the last year. As our commitment to the 5% Club, we want to ensure 5% of our workforce is in earn and learn opportunities, but we also see apprentices and graduates as being an opportunity for us to build our pipeline of the future. We've got a very diverse, multi-generational workforce, but we do have a very small percentage of young people working in our business. So we see this as a great avenue to bring that diversity of thinking, thought, but also age into our business as well.
And as you say, bringing the next generation forward for all of those challenges. Well, Karima, thank you very much for sharing your story today. And again, thank you very much for taking part in the Employer Audit.
Thank you.
So the second of our larger employers who took part in the Employer Audit is Seddon Group. And I'm really pleased that we're joined by Nicola Hodkinson, who's the director and owner of the company. Nicola, welcome to the Employer Audit. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Could I start just by asking you to introduce the company for those who haven't come across the Seddon Group before?
So the Seddon Group is a construction developer and house builder. We are 4th generation, established in 1897. So next year is our 125 years in business. So no mean feat there. We employ around 650, 680 tradespeople, project managers, site managers, support services across all the different divisions. We mostly work in and around the Midlands area, northwest of England, but we tend to go where our customers ask us to go.
Fantastic. And at the time of the audit, you had 44 apprentices with you. Why are they such a key part of the company? I mean, that's something like 7% of your workforce, so a very significant proportion.
We've always taken on apprentices. We've always trained. We have a bit of a mantra of grow your own, and we took our first apprentice back in the 1950s. The old-fashioned YTS schemes in those days, and we've always done it. We have trade apprentices, we have admin apprentices, level 3s. We also have graduates and BScs, sort of in quantity surveying or real estate management or construction management, but also in accounts and marketing. So we've always brought in early careers, not just young people, but also people who are looking to come into our sector later on in life.
And do you see that as a long-term commitment, for those individuals, that they won't just join you for an apprenticeship, they will then progress within the company, or is it more complicated than that?
I think it can be a bit more complicated than that, but generally I think people start with us and they are trained, we give them exposure to work experience, and we support them through their learning, and then their contract continues after they finish their learning. But I don't think you've ever finished learning. We've got a high proportion of our senior management team were apprentices with us. I can't tell you the exact figure. Our director, who's in charge of plumbing and electrical works, he was an apprentice with us back in the day. So we've always done that, and those people come through, and also people leave us and then they come back later on once they've had experience from other parts of the industry or indeed in other sectors. So I think growing our own from an early careers, but also giving people a pathway so that they can see where they can grow in our sector. Construction is really unique. It isn't linear, it isn't horizontal. You can go in so many different directions. You can start life off as a joiner and you can become a managing director of a construction company. There is no ceiling as far as learning and developing in the construction industry.
Well, it's a really exciting story. And just to finish, how optimistic are you about the next 12 months in terms of the business and the recruitment you're doing?
Really optimistic. The government incentive scheme, and if they're listening or looking, it'd be really good if they could increase that and encourage that. I think we've always employed and we've always taken on apprentices, but our supply chain find that more difficult. And I think the incentive scheme will really have helped them to actually take on and take that leap of faith of taking on young people and early careers with apprentices with some extra government funding.
Well, fingers crossed they were listening. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon and for taking part in the Employer Audit. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you.
Now let's have a look at the SMEs who participated in this year's research. So let's start with the profile of those organisations. So 21 SMEs took part. And of course, the definition of an SME is an organisation that has 250 employees or fewer. Now, for those who took part in the audit, there were 3 organisations who were of the smallest size, so less than 50 employees in total. There were 6 organisations with somewhere between 51 and 100 staff, and 12 organisations between 101 and 250. So a total workforce across those 21 employers of 2,724. If we look at the number of earn and learn employees they had, there were 8 organisations who had fewer than 10, another 8 who had somewhere between 11 and 25, and there were 5 employers who had more than 26 employees in earn and learn roles, the total being some 341. So it's an impressive percentage, well over 12% of the workforce that these 21 SMEs are in earn and learn roles. And if we look at them by individual employer, so each of those 21 bars represents an employer who took part in the audit. You can see there on the left-hand side, there's one organisation who's actually got over 40% of their workforce are in earn and learn roles. And all but one were over the 5% threshold, so have done very well in terms of the profile for their organisations. So in terms of breadth and balance, let's have a look at the different types of opportunities offered by the 21 SMEs. So all 21 offered apprenticeships, and the largest grouping were those offering higher or degree apprentices, so 18 organisations offering the higher and degree apprenticeships, 17 at level 3, and 10 employers offering at level 2. 9 out of the 21 employed graduates, and 4 offered degree placement opportunities for university undergraduates. In terms of the volume of roles, well, 244 apprenticeships, 52 graduate training positions, and 9 employees on degree placements. It's all about inclusion and social mobility. Well, I made the comment earlier that not every employer who took part in the audit was able to provide data on the diversity of their either apprentices or graduates, and that was true for the SMEs as well. But there was enough data so that we could get a sense of the gender, the age, the ethnic background, and the disabilities for apprentices. So in terms of gender, well, 78% of employees, apprentices at the SMEs were male, 22% female, and under 1% were non-binary. In terms of the age profile, well, 1 in 6 were aged 16 to 18, so school leavers. 61% were in the 19 to 24 years old category, and around a quarter were older apprentices, 25 years and above. 7% were Bain apprentices, and 3% had learning difficulties or disabilities. There wasn't enough data to measure either sexuality or social mobility. If we look at graduates, a similar lack of data for those last two categories, but 2/3 were male, 1/3 female, less than 1% non-binary. 2/3 of graduates had come straight from university and were in the 19 to 24 year category. 1 in 3 were older, 25 years and above. 10% were Black, Asian or minority ethnic backgrounds, and 1 in 6 of those who were able to provide data had learning difficulties or disabilities. But bear in mind, just 4 organisations providing data on disabilities. If we look at quality, well, we're looking at completion rates for both apprenticeships and graduates, and those figures were very high for the larger employers, but they're even more impressive for the SMEs. So 15 out of the 21 employers employing apprentices, 100% of their apprentices completed their apprenticeships, and almost all went on to permanent roles with the company. If we look at graduate programs, 9 employers offering graduate programs, 6 of the 9, all 100% of their graduates completing their training and going on to permanent roles with the organisation. Just one organisation saying that less than 70% of their graduates made it through the training. And in terms of future growth, well, some very positive results here as well. So for the 2020 to 21 recruiting cycle that finished back in July, 107 apprentices recruited, 37 graduates recruited. But the targets for the year ahead, well, you can see the numbers jump to 131 apprentices and 50 graduates for the coming 12 months. So it looks like we've got growth not only for the larger employers, but amongst the SMEs as well when it comes to earn and learn roles. So just drawing that together, 21 organisations with fewer than 250 employees took part in the audit, so 21 SMEs, a combined workforce of just over 2,700, of whom 340 in earn and learn roles, a percentage of 12.5% for the workforce. 20 out of the 21 employers, at least 5% were in earn and learn roles. We've just seen apprentices and graduates very high completion rates in terms of their training and going on to permanent roles with the employers. And not only have we had growth in terms of the larger employers for the year ahead, earn and learn recruitment is expected to increase amongst the SMEs for the year ahead as well. So that's our profile of the SMEs who've taken part in the employer audit. And I'm really pleased that we're joined by one of the companies who's taken part in the research. Andrew Churchill is Executive Chairman of JJ Churchill. So Andrew, just let's start by introducing the company and what you do.
Delighted. Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Churchill, as you said, and as Executive Chairman, I've been running the business either as Chair or as Managing Director for the last 20 or so years. But as a business, we're 84 years young. So we date from the beginning of the jet age, and that's what we focus on. Advanced gas turbine blades for many of the jet engines that your listeners will be familiar with from going on holiday.
So you are an apprenticeship employer. At the time of the audit, I think 5 out of your 86 employees were on apprenticeship programs. Tell me why you're investing in apprentices rather than hiring experienced engineers for those technical roles.
Well, this is a layered thing and it's nothing new. So whilst for many going to university is an obvious next step after finishing school, going down that alternative apprenticeship route has become recently and in recent years more attractive for many. But for us, it's very much in our corporate DNA. And if I go back to my grandfather, who founded the business in 1937, first he read engineering and modern languages at Cambridge, but then he went on with Armstrong Siddeley and did an apprenticeship. And that, with his son, my father, who followed, he did an apprenticeship, that set the DNA for our business in terms of valuing people who are creative, applied problem solvers who become tomorrow's leaders.
So how difficult is it to find the right apprentices to bring into the business?
I turn that question on its head. We're a modest-sized business, medium-sized business, but critically, we're rurally based. So if I don't engage with my local schools, primary and secondary, then I'm not talking to the employees of my horizon in my strat planning of 7 years hence. So it's not easy, but if you don't invest the effort in it, then what is the point when you're manufacturing some of the most advanced parts that go into an aircraft, where you've got absolutely the best capital equipment in the world, not having the best people? And those best people require significant investment. An aerospace apprenticeship costs between £80,000 and £100,000. A degree is cheap, an apprenticeship is not. But why wouldn't you make that investment to complement the technology? And it's an investment for the long term. The chance to work with somebody when they're 16 or 17, because generally that's the age we take, is an absolute privilege, because you have the opportunity to mold and work with a character where they may not be the brightest in terms of academic achievement, but if you've got that spark of attitude and aptitude that as an employer you can feed, you've got somebody for life. And that's really important. It sounds a bit old-fashioned, but actually that culture that you begin to work together is one of team building, listening and problem solving, that it can be much harder as a graduate coming in cold to achieve.
When you talk about the investment in 16 and 17-year-olds, do they repay you by then staying on and growing much longer careers within the business?
Overwhelmingly so. I mean, our business, I mentioned founder, my grandfather, my father, our current managing director, almost all of my engineering team, most of the people on my shop floor are ex-apprentices. Now, that doesn't mean they haven't gone to university. Many indeed have and have followed higher qualifications, and some are working towards chartered qualifications now. So it isn't an either or. This rather binary paradigm of vocational apprenticeship qualification or going to university is increasingly nonsense in the modern world. And I don't want either or, I want both. But for me, the opportunity to work with them through an apprenticeship and then on to HND and degree and chartered status thereafter is by far the preferred route in the high-tech and high-problem environment that we work with.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and thank you for sharing your passion for all of this with us. I was just going to finish by saying, how are you feeling about the year ahead, given all the challenges of the last 18 months, both for the business and for your apprentices?
So our business has been through an extremely difficult time. We were planning to treble in March 2020, and then we found ourselves shrinking by 90% because we're aerospace. But you deal with the challenges that you're dealt, and that's what we've done, and we've recapitalized, we're bouncing back. I'd rather take a bigger picture view, because I'm excited about the future. When you consider any of society's existential challenges today, be that, I don't know, global warming or the government's levelling up agenda, engineering is going to be absolutely at the core of any solution. And I challenge you to find an engineering business that succeeds in that environment where apprentices won't be part of that solution.
Fantastic. Well, that's a really exciting and very positive message to finish on. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us today.
Delighted. Thank you.
So there we are. We've run through all the data and research from the 5% Club Employer Audit for 2021, and it's been great to talk to 3 of the employers who took part in this year's audit. Now, all the results we've looked at today are in the individual research reports that we produced for each of the employers that have participated in the research. I'll be back a little bit later for our discussion panel, but for now, it's time for me to hand back to Mark to find out which of our employers have been awarded gold, silver, and bronze membership of the 5% Club for 2021. Bye for now.
Thanks, Martin. And as always, that was a great set of presentations and some really powerful insights gained from the research that we've conducted as part of the inaugural Employer Audit. So thanks. And I'm sure all those who listened gained as much from that as I did. And hopefully that'll feed through into questions and the panel discussion later. So without further ado, let's move on with proceedings and start listing our awards. So to start with, here are the recipients of the 2021-2022 Bronze Awards. These are the participants in the Employer Audit who meet the 5% Club membership criteria and are on the path to 2.5% of the workforce in Earn and Learn schemes. First up, we've got Aldi, the major retailer.
American Express, banking and financial services sector.
Birmingham City Council, government and public sector.
We are extremely proud to be a bronze member of the 5% Club. We will use this now as a foundation to further improve our offer for young people and to support them to achieve the skills that they need to have successful careers.
Deutsche Bank, also from the banking and financial services sector.
Lidl, another major retailer.
And Mastec UK, digital technology computer services.
Excellent, and now moving on, here are the recipients of the 2021-2022 Silver Awards. These are participants in the Employer Audit who meet the 5% Club membership criteria and are on the path to 5% of the workforce on Earn and Learn schemes. Anesco Crane Hire Limited, construction and housing sector.
Coca-Cola Euro-Pacific Partners Limited, food and drink sector.
We are delighted to be a silver member. This really cements for us the work we've been doing as a youth-friendly employer and the accolade that we got at the end of 2020. So this will be fantastic to take back to the business, and we will work to get to that next status.
Genuit Group PLC, construction products.
Kohler Uninterruptible Power, electricity including renewables.
Kinetic, defence.
This audit is really valuable to us as it helps us understand what's working well and what can be even better. And it means we can keep learning from each other and pushing the boundaries of the possible so that we can get the very best outcomes for young people. So we're delighted and proud that Kinetic's recognised as a silver member.
Stagecoach, transport.
Tarmac, construction and housing sector.
Thames Water, utilities.
TransUnion International, digital technology and computer services. And finally, here are the recipients of the 2021-2022 Gold Awards. These are participants who meet the 5% Club membership criteria with in excess of 5% of the workforce on Earn and Learn schemes. ADI Group, engineering.
ACOM, infrastructure and building services.
Bagnalls, construction and housing.
Balfour Beatty, infrastructure.
Balfour Beatty is absolutely over the moon about finding out that we've become a gold member of the 5% Club, and that's something that we'll be sharing far and wide. It's absolutely brilliant news, so thank you very much for letting us know about that. Brilliant.
Baltic Apprenticeships, education sector.
We are delighted to be awarded gold. This achievement is representation of our collective effort and commitment to investing in our people, future skills and advocacy of apprenticeships.
Bell Group Limited, construction and housing.
Bellway, construction and housing.
Bethel Group PLC, construction and housing.
BT, telecoms.
Camilleri Construction Limited, construction and housing.
CGI, digital technology and computer services.
Commercial Property Maintenance Services Limited, infrastructure.
Costain Limited, construction and housing.
Coil Personnel Limited, recruitment.
CPI, Centre for Process Innovation Limited, engineering innovation.
CR Civil Engineering Limited, construction and housing.
We're all very proud of achieving gold membership with the 5% Club. Actually, apprentices make up 11% of our workforce currently. It makes us proud to be recognised for our passion and commitment to the younger generation.
Dell Power Solutions Limited, electricity including renewables.
Dynamic FN, infrastructure.
Eurovia UK Limited, construction and infrastructure.
Galliford Try, construction and infrastructure.
Galliford Try are so proud and excited to be awarded gold membership from the 5% Club. Our early careers population is such an important part of our business, and it's really, really exciting to have recognition of that.
Gemini Accident Repair Centres, transport.
Graham, Construction and Infrastructure.
We are really delighted to have been awarded gold membership of the 5% Club, once again demonstrating our commitment to this important movement.
GSK, Pharmaceutical and Biotechnology.
Annan Secure Health, Health and Care.
Hanson UK, Construction Products.
Hanson are delighted to have been awarded gold status. This will certainly help us to recruit up to 60 trainees over the coming months and improve the Hanson brand both internally and externally.
Highfield Professional Solutions, Construction Professional Services.
Hill Group, Construction and Housing.
Hill are incredibly proud to be a gold member of the 5% Club. As a growing employer, we are dedicated to investing in future talent and training the next generation of leaders of our business. Becoming a gold member is a true recognition of commitment to this and the 17% of our staff who are on Earn As You Learn programs.
HS2, Construction and Infrastructure.
J. McCann and Company Limited, Construction and Housing.
JT Mackley & Co Limited, Construction and Housing.
JJ Churchill Limited, Precision Engineering.
We are absolutely overwhelmed to have received a gold medal, certainly not expected. We go for a number of awards, and the most recent we've won was actually as top apprenticeship employer for Leicestershire, and to have a recognition from the 5% Club, the group of employers that is so instrumental in making sure we recognise the position of apprentices and graduates in all of our businesses. To become a gold member is really important. It's something we look forward to shouting about.
John Siston Son, Construction.
I think being a gold member really just underlines our commitment that we've had for over 100 years, that by supporting the communities and the societies that we work within, we will always just get long-standing, highly talented individuals into our business.
Keepmoat Homes, Construction and Housing.
Keir, Construction and Housing.
Kilnbridge Construction Services Limited, Construction and Housing.
Located, Government Public Sector.
Lockheed Martin UK, Defence.
We are really proud to be recognised with the Gold Award from the 5% Club.
MBDA UK, Defence.
MCFT, Infrastructure and Building Services.
We're absolutely delighted to get gold accreditation. We've been systematically engaged in learning and development for 15 years, both with our City and Guilds Assured Technical Academy and with our Institute of Leadership and Management Junior Leadership programs. Not just bringing on skills in the next generation, but trying to widen horizons and offer adventure and growth. Fantastic to see those recognised, and I simply don't understand why more businesses don't see the commercial benefit.
McLaughlin and Harvey, Construction and Housing.
Ministry of Defence, Government and Public Sector.
Morgan Sindall Infrastructure, Construction and Housing.
Morrison Spottiswoode Limited, Construction and Housing.
Mott MacDonald, Engineering Professional Services.
PwC, Professional Services.
QA Limited, Technology and Education.
The 5% audit is important for us to see how we stack up against industry peers with regards to our emerging talent strategy. To have achieved gold makes us feel extremely proud and confirms that we are on the right track, and even makes us feel more determined to do more for young people.
Redrow Homes Limited, Construction and Housing.
We've been supporters of the 5% Club for many years now, so I was absolutely delighted that Redrow was awarded the gold membership. We look forward to carrying on working with the 5% Club for many years to come because we share the same goals. We both want every school, every college, every parent, and perhaps most importantly, every young person to be made aware of just what a great opportunity an apprenticeship is.
RS Components Limited, Electronics, Machinery and Parts.
Schneider Electric, Energy, Electricity and Renewables.
Great people make Schneider Electric a great company, and we are privileged this has been recognised in our Gold Award from the 5% Club, an asset that will truly underpin our employee value proposition. This award is testament to the value we place in recruiting and retaining our early talent pool and building the best teams for our future.
Seddon Group, Construction and Housing.
Siemens PLC, Engineering.
For us, being part of the audit has enabled us to be really transparent and learn from others and gain the recognition for our achievements as well. So we are delighted to have been awarded Gold Standard.
SPV Group, Infrastructure and Building Services.
SPV Group are delighted to be active members of the 5% Club and to have recently been awarded Gold membership status.
Thomas Sindon Limited, Construction and Housing.
Warren Services, Electrical, Mechanical, Manufacturing.
Whitehead Building Services, Infrastructure and Building Services.
We were very proud to become a member of the 5% Club and represent the building services sector, and the award of Gold is gratefully received by all our directors, managers and training providers as recognition of the achievements the Whitehead team strive for.
William Hare Limited, Engineering and Manufacturing.
William Hare are incredibly proud to be Gold members of the 5% Club. This will show potential apprentices that they can have the confidence that they will have a fantastic career with William Hare.
Womble Bond Dickinson, Legal and Professional Services.
Woodford Heating and Energy Limited, Engineering and Energy.
So I'd just like to reiterate our congratulations to all the participants in the 2021 5% Club Employer Audit. Hopefully some great insights that will now feed forward into our panel discussion. And just to reiterate, that's 73 participants in total in our first year. 58 achieved the gold standard, 9 silver and 6 bronze. That's a tremendous achievement, fabulous demonstrated commitment, and hopefully you've gained some useful insights to guide further scheme growth, accessibility and inclusion as we go forward. We'll now move into the panel discussion, and I won't reintroduce Martin Burchell because Martin's been on screen a fair bit this afternoon and is a wealth of information both from the research he's done for the Employer Audit, but also support he gives to the National Apprenticeship Service Top 100 and also the Times Graduate Top 100 and the National Apprenticeship Service, of course, is about apprentices. But we've got 3 further panel members who provide different spheres of expertise. So the first panel member I'd like to introduce is Sharon Blighfield. Sharon's already been on the screen a bit this afternoon. Sharon is Head of Early Careers at Coca-Cola Euro Pacific Partners Limited. Sharon, can you just give us a few minutes of your perspective on what you've heard this afternoon?
Good afternoon, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to be part of the panel today. And the first thing I do want to say is we are absolutely delighted to get our silver accreditation. But what has really struck me from the report, that Martin took us through, and just even reading my, through my own report, is the breadth of organisations that have participated. We're classed as a large organisation, but then you have the SMEs. But the passion that everybody has talked about has been the same, regardless of the size of the organisation. There is some real positives coming out by taking part in this first audit. It is allowing us to see the areas that we need to focus on, but more importantly, the areas that we're doing really well at the moment. I think that's an absolute positive. As I reflected, not only through my report, but what was also said, it's very interesting that we have all more or less faced the same challenge when we talk about the social mobility aspect and how we're capturing that data. I know that for our organisation, when we completed the audit, earlier in the summer, we weren't capturing that social mobility data. But interestingly enough, in the last month, we've put a survey out to all of our workforce to start capturing that. So, it's given us a real call to action. And hopefully when we participate in the next one, we'll have much richer data that we'll be able to share as well. For us as an organisation, we've got about 2.5% of our employees who are in the earn and learn space, are I'm going to say bread and butter are apprenticeships, whether that be through our early careers or our career builder program. I have apprentices who range from the age of 16 right through to 61 who are undertaking programs. And for those who are in the career builder, for some of them, it's about a changing career direction and leveraging the apprenticeship program to be able to support that change in career direction. And it's allowed them to, obtain that promotion that maybe otherwise that they hadn't have done. But in actual fact, Jill from the 5% Club, when we first talked about why as an organisation should we become part of it, it was about giving us some more of that structure. And what were our proof points? Because, you know, we're competing against all of the organisations who have participated in this survey for that talent. It doesn't matter what size. And so by having that structure and really thinking about how can we drive that yearn to continue learning, you know, this has therefore allowed us to really put a focus on, and it's become part of our strategic imperative when we're working, you know, with the much wider stakeholders. But by having this report and being able now to take this report back to the business to say, this is what we're doing very well at, so let's continue with that. But here are our areas of focus, and here are also some of the other organisations who have achieved gold and what they are doing to achieve gold. This will help us to be able to strengthen even further the direction that we want to take. So yes, we've got a big focus on that early careers and those young people and giving them an opportunity, but we have a fantastic wealth of existing employees that we want to be able to stretch and to move forward as well. So
Brilliant.
Great report, and I'm looking forward to future.
Fabulous. And thanks for joining us this afternoon, Sharon, and I'm sure you'll have more points to make as we go through the panel discussion. So I'd also now like to introduce Edward Donker. And Edward, great to have you here. And I note from the chat there's lots of questions around social mobility, not unsurprising, so I'm sure we can explore that. But Edward, great to have you. And just to introduce Edward is the Employer Engagement Lead at the Social Mobility Commission, and has done a lot of work around the apprenticeship social mobility toolkit, which I'm sure we'll explore later. Edward, could you just give us your reflections on what you've heard this afternoon?
Yes, thank you, Mark, and thank you for inviting me to your symposium today. So yeah, just a few reflections on what I heard. It's great that you've had so many organisations being involved in your audit. And I think one of the big things that did come through was around social mobility data. So I am hoping that hopefully we'll get some questions in on that and we can explore it a little further in our Q&A session today. So just to give you some background, so yes, I'm Edward, Employer Engagement Lead at the Social Mobility Commission. So the Commission is an arm's length body that sits in the Cabinet Office. So we have a statutory remit to monitor and advocate for social mobility across the UK, and we provide advice to stakeholders, so whether that's ministers, policymakers, think tanks, employers and organisations. So the employers strand of the Commission builds on some of our extensive research and recommendations. So it's aimed at giving employers and organisations practical tools to not only diversify their workforces, but also improve social mobility by removing some of those barriers experienced by those from low socioeconomic backgrounds. So as part of the research that we've conducted, so last year we published a report on apprenticeships and social mobility. So the report showed that as it currently stands, the apprenticeship system in general does need to do more to meet its promise for social mobility. So the report found that since the apprenticeship levy was introduced in 2017, it has funded a higher proportion of higher level apprenticeships, which are more likely to be taken by learners from more privileged backgrounds than people from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds, which ultimately who would benefit more from apprenticeships. So the report also found disadvantaged gaps from those from low socioeconomic backgrounds, and these gaps exist at every stage. So it's something that was covered in the presentation, and I'd quite like to explore it later as well, that there was gaps in quality of training, the probability of apprenticeships progressing, and career earnings, all based on socioeconomic background. But one thing the report did say was that actually apprenticeships are one of the few indisputable effective tools for social mobility. and an effective mechanism available to employers to build diverse and talented workforces if they are targeted correctly. So in response to the report, last month, we did actually publish a toolkit aimed at giving practical tips and actions for employers and training providers on what they can do to ensure that their apprenticeship programs are supporting social mobility. So the toolkit is designed as a roadmap for any organisation working in the apprenticeship landscape who is committed to improving socioeconomic diversity, and includes recommendations on their data collection, hiring processes, outreach, progression, and also has case studies and best practice guidance. So it's something that I'll be really happy to take questions on during this session.
Fabulous, thank you, Edward. I'm sure we'll get lots of questions around the toolkit and around some of the wider observations you've got on social mobility. The final person I'd like to introduce as a panel member is Mark Lomas. Welcome, Mark. Mark is Head of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion at HS2. So Mark, could you give us your reflections on what you've heard this afternoon?
Yeah, it's been really, really interesting. And of course, I would have a real interest in the sort of the diversity bits and the social mobility bits. So I'm really keen to explore that later. I mean, I think for us at HS2, we see Earn and Learn as absolutely critical to solving some of the skill shortages, which have been compounded by Brexit and other things, and, as well as a retiring workforce. So we really see this as one of the primary levers to address some of those issues. And I think for us, it's absolutely critical in a sector where we have an aging workforce that we use Earn and Learn to encourage that diversity, to make an impact on social mobility. And of course, for us, where HS2 is going to be in communities for the next kind of 20 years up and down the country, apprenticeships, graduates, all these sorts of opportunities are the types of benefits that we can bring to the communities that we're in, and so that they are really, they're really very important for us. Personally, I was really pleased and maybe a little surprised that construction and engineering sectors were so well represented in the audit at all levels, but particularly at gold standard level. And it brought a kind of little bit of a smile to my face as I kept seeing sort of the names of organizations that were in the HS2 supply chain. And of course, for us, you know, that's hugely important. That's a massive driver of Earn and Learn outcomes. And I think the other thing that really struck me was in the report and in the presentation today, it's a really powerful message for SMEs to encourage them to take part, to recruit apprentices, to see Earn and Learn as a real investment in the future, not a cost. And of course, you know, in our sector, once you get below tier ones, you can quickly get to SMEs. So they're a key driver for us. I think we have a huge commitment to apprentices across the HS2 program. We have a commitment to employ over 2,000 apprentices. So being you know, a member of the 5% Club, and particularly a gold member, is a real way for us to demonstrate our kind of ambition in that area. We have over 750 apprentices working on the program at the moment. And we are keen to progress more over time and significantly exceed that 2,000 apprentices we would hope. I think for us, Earn and Learn is a really powerful staff development mechanism. So it's not just for new entrants, but it's for our current staff that are in the business. And it makes a huge difference. So, I mean, for HS2, I think we're, number one, we're really proud of our membership of the 5% Club. We see that as a way of encouraging not only ourselves to do better, but the supply chain to do better. And I think this is one of the really critical tools in our toolbox to fix skill shortages, which are going to become critical for us in infrastructure within the next 10 years. So the more we can pour into Earn and Learn activity, the better it's going to be for the sector as a whole. So thank you for the invite today, and I'm really looking forward to picking up conversations with everyone later.
Fabulous. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for that introduction, and thanks, panel members, for your initial overviews. She's normally the face of the 5% Club, but this afternoon, Jill's going to be the voice of the 5% Club as she sits behind the scenes to start off with, pulling together the questions. So So Jill, have we got a question that we can put to the panel?
We have, and we've got lots and lots of comments as well. So perhaps I'll repeat people's comments and we can discuss them. I thought it was really worth opening, however, with a couple of comments about the people in the audit. Matt from Baltic Apprenticeship said, love that people and people development are intrinsically part of your business culture, DNA and success. Amazing. Kay from Highfield Professional Services, totally refreshing to hear the passion about investing in people, whatever age. Well done, everyone. And Vicky from Aldi, I think, was quoting Andrew in his piece to Martin. Why wouldn't you invest in people to complement equipment? Excellent and passionate quote. So I think the club's always been a movement of people and shared values. And I think today really, really is bringing that out. Anyway, enough of that. I shall come on to some questions. So forgive me to those people posting the questions. I'm trying to group them and I may be misrepresenting and I don't intend to. There's been a lot about, not surprisingly, the gender split, the diversity and so on. Nicola from Seddon said the gender and Bain split is interesting. Percentages appear low. And Norma from the Ministry of Defence has said, recognising the gender split in the armed forces, if you remove the MOD, would this make a significant change to the gender split we found in the large employer apprenticeship results? So it's quite interesting because quite a lot of people want to know underneath the data and some more detail. So I guess that one is around gender split and what's been reported.
Okay, Jill, thanks for that. So it was striking, and certainly as we went through, it did seem that the graduate offer was more inclusive and diverse than perhaps the apprenticeship offer. But I'm no statistician, so it's lucky we've got one in the room. So Martin, to start off with, do you want to give us a statistical point? And then I think we can pull some of the broader panel members in with an answer on the reasons why that could be the case.
Okay, so I was just reading through some of the comments in the chat as well, and I think probably the first point to probably stress is that we within our 73 employers who've taken part, there is a high proportion from either construction or engineering companies, and I think that then does determine some of the figures that then follow in terms of diversity. So if you look at apprentices, the gender split was 80% men, 20% women. For graduates, 64-36. So a difference there in terms of gender. And it's really interesting if you look at, for example, engineering degree courses, the ratio of men to women is 80%, 20%. So you could argue that for employers who are recruiting graduates from university, the supply that they're being given is determined by those who are studying on the courses. And to some extent, that's also true of apprenticeships, but it's less defined at school level than it would be at university. So it's interesting just to delve into whether there are still some very significant industry or sector stereotypes which engender some of the differences that we're seeing. And then as we move through the rest of the diversity data, the point I made, I think 2 or 3 times in the presentation, was that the number of employers who could contribute details about things like social mobility or disabilities, those numbers were much smaller. So a relatively small proportion of employers actually able to measure that. And just to pick up on that one specific point about the MOD, it's a very poorly kept secret that they are the employer who have over 25,000 apprentices across the Navy, the Army and the RAF. Their diversity data wasn't approved in time to include within the audit. So it isn't a feature of the profiles that we're looking at. I think had it been so, we'd have potentially seen an even higher proportion of men for the apprenticeship figures.
Martin, thank you very much. Mark, I'm gonna come to you because you're the guru on equality, diversity and inclusion. What's your take on those figures?
Well, I mean, I think there is something about the sector as a whole, and you're quite right to point out that infrastructure, construction and engineering, we are looking at low levels of gender diversity and other types of diversity. I think our experience for HS2 Limited, not HS2 program improvement, but HS2 Limited, is that we're very successful in attracting a very diverse range of apprentices and graduates. Really diverse, close to 50-50 gender split and sort of over 30% DNA. We also monitor disability, sexual orientation, etc. We don't yet collect information on social mobility apart from postcodes of deprivation, so I'm looking forward to picking up on that later. But I think key to our success in this area has been the selection process. So we have a fairly robust selection process, which is designed to remove bias. So, for example, we use something called blind auditions for our apprentices, which remove CVs and applications entirely, and is much more akin to a situational judgment test. We've removed things like intellect tests in our selection process, etc. And what we are finding is we get a superbly diverse cohort of people in, primarily because our processes aren't screening them out at the first phase. So if organizations are struggling with diversity, both for their apprenticeship cohort and their graduate cohort, yes, there's all sorts of things you can do with advertising. I accept that. But I think the much more powerful approach is to fix the selection process. And if you do that, you would genuinely find that you get a really good and diverse cohort through. At least that's our experience and how we handle it.
Excellent, thanks, Mark. And I'm sure there may be some follow-on questions for that. Jill, have we got any other themes or questions to emerge?
Well, we've got some link to this actually. Matt from Baltic Apprenticeships has asked to those on the panel, or even other participating employers that monitor social mobility and EDI data, can they share their approach? And slightly touching on something that Mark's just been talking about there, Tim from RS Components says they have a very naturally diverse apprenticeship workforce by removing the need for certain qualifications. Mark, it's your favourite issue, credentialism. So they remove the need for certain qualifications from job adverts, so assess how candidates think and behave, and they grow their knowledge and skills. So some of the best employees didn't do well academically, so why would you recruit on existing education? So I think there's a couple of points there of Tim tapping into what Mark was saying, but also someone asking, can people share their approach? How can we do this? How can we do it well?
Yeah, fabulous. And I think, you know, the paper we wrote over the summer around credentialism and the fact that, you know, we had a very senior person who was in the BBC who was going for roles, and for all the jobs she went for, she needed to have a degree. But actually, when she went through with the recruiters, they said they didn't need people like her, and the credentials was limiting the talent pool. So, Mark, you know, are you able to share your approach? Because I know I've read quite a lot of the reports, but yours was quite striking in terms of just how well you performed on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to share our approach. In fact, we have a YouTube video which is publicly available, so I'll make the link available after this session, which it essentially lays out the case for diversity monitoring. And you know, I think the way we think about it is by collecting that diversity data, we are really learning about the quality of our process. And I think the industry as a whole has kind of screened people out of the industry for 20 years through credentialism, through, as someone's raised in the chat, a lack of flexible working opportunities, etc. You can only really fine-tune and adjust your processes if you understand who and how they're working. Lots of people understand how they're working. Not many organizations yet really across the full spectrum understand who they're working for. And we have a kind of saying at HS2, and we like to treat diversity like an engineering problem. We like to find the point of failure and fix it. And that's not about fixing the people, that's about fixing the evaluation systems and the recruitment processes that we have. So absolutely happy to share what we have on diversity monitoring with anybody on this call.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mark. And Sharon, just over to you as an employer who's, you know, you're transforming the approach in Coca-Cola, looking for growth. Have you got any perspectives on this particular area?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one for us as an organisation. So I look at it through two lenses. So we have, you know, from a company perspective, the challenge around diversity in all its forms, And, you know, we've been on a journey probably for the last 2.5 years to really get the gender balance, ethnicity, you know, and really starting to look at those who may have disabilities and also that social mobility. But I think early careers, we're kind of almost leading the way because we partner with external organisations who can put us in contact, especially from a young adult's perspective, and therefore open up those opportunities, because a lot of young people often deselect themselves from our corporate environment because they think, oh, it's a great big corporate environment, I'll never fit in there, or I'm not seeing people like me there, so why would I want to? So we as a business have really been striving, and we're not there yet, and we're nowhere near where Mark is as yet, in terms of recording data. So with gender data, ethnicity, yeah, we can probably get that data. When it comes to that much wider, richer information, we've literally only just now made that decision to go out to all of our employees and ask those specific questions. And even today I was having a little bit of a debate because Edward had shared previously about one of the questions, and we'd put child as opposed to 14, and it was like, why had we put child? So there is still a lot around how do you ask the question that will then elicit the right responses for us in this space. And I've got to be honest, it's not easy. It is absolutely not easy, because there is also a trust element as to why you need that data. I think at the moment, whilst we look at it from an early careers and engaging with young people and using partners who actually gather that data for us and give us our impact reports, it's much easier when you're going to your existing workforce to ask them for that data. There is almost a suspicion as to why do you need that data and what are you going to do with it. But also being in a global organization, we have to look at systems that work across the board. And there are some countries we're not even allowed to ask for that data. So we have to try and manage it country by country to get what we can. And that's why I think the journey's taken us much longer to get to where we are today.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Sharon. And I think, as we move forward with the audit, there'll be a great opportunity to measure the growth and see how we mature in terms of this data. And part of the offering that we'll be putting forward in the next year will be for those that have gone through the audit, or bronze, silver and gold members, to be invited to masterclasses on these kind of subjects to explore the findings of the report in a bit more detail, which builds on the point that I'm seeing in the chat from Tony Ellender at Balfour Beatty about the way the 5% Club can pull people together to actually have these discussions and share that good practice. So more on that to come in the future. Jill, have we got any other themes or questions emerging?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all probably themes coming out of each other. But it was an interesting comment from Victoria Scarth, who is the chair of our Board of Trustees, and it's great to have her here today, saying it was fascinating to see a big employer like Thames Water leading internally on the parity of esteem between apprentices and graduates. And Tracy Johnson at Balfour Beatty also said, interesting to hear about how apprentice and graduate programmes being aligned. And I wonder if the panel want to comment on that, of experience of that and the impact of that.
Yeah, I'll go back to Sharon to start off with, Sharon. So, when it comes to that opportunity to align the apprentice and grad schemes, have you seen that? Have you witnessed that elsewhere? Any point?
Yeah, yes. So it's really interesting. So we've always had apprentices, but very small numbers. And then 2009. We launched our grad schemes, and they were the high profile in the organisation, and everybody wanted to be part of the grad scheme. And very interesting, and it was interesting from the research, just how high the retention was, I saw from the outcomes. And we didn't experience that. So we therefore paused all of our grad schemes in 2016. And it's actually 2021 that we have just reintroduced the grad scheme. And the grads that have come in have then looked at our apprentices as if to say, whoa, these are award-winning apprentices. They have got the spotlight in the business. People talk about them. We want to be part of that. And I have a really good example of an apprentice who joined our organisation, having done a level 3 business administration apprenticeship with us. Her brother went to university. He's now just joined our grad scheme, but he looks at his sister as if to say, she's actually very high profile in this organisation, and she's gone through an apprenticeship route, and I am now coming in and I am kind of like, oh, I have to learn from my sister because she's already got the kudos in the business. And that's how our grads are looking at it, because for me, we do need both pathways, but our apprentices have come in, they've learned not only from an academic perspective, but also from the business perspective, and we have been able to nurture them and really, really nurture them. Whereas the grads now that we're bringing in, they have to learn about the world of work and how big corporates operate. And I think that's the difference for us now. We will have them both at the same level of importance program-wise and create the same opportunities for all of them. And it's that example of the brother and the sister that has really highlighted it for us.
Well, that's a fascinating point. It builds on the point from Karima about this flip, the parity of STEAM, that, you know, in education, graduates are seen to have preference, but in the workplace, it's flipping over, and perhaps it's about the graduates getting the parity of STEAM in the workplace, not the apprentices. Well, just back to you from an HS2 perspective. Do you have a view on this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really perceive that we have that same issue in terms of grads or apprentices being seen as sort of more high profile than the other. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. There are a number of networks at HS2. One is a future talent network. So when you join the business as an apprentice or a grad, most people go into that network because that's a network of people on the various schemes who they're always interacting with. And that sort of, we are in it together, is just the way it is in our business. Of course, we give a lot of profile to apprentice numbers because that's a key indicator and a performance benefit for HS2 program as well as HS2 Limited. But it's the activities they do jointly. So joint activities, sometimes in learning with some of the networks that they work with joint again. So I think I've not really perceived that being much of an issue for us. But then again, you know, HS2 Limited is a small sample size of apprentices and graduates. That may be totally different if I went and asked, you know, the 1,000 or so in the supply chain. But I do think, look, they are routes. They are both routes into an organization and to help develop your career. So I don't perceive as one being any more prestigious than the other. I think they're both good routes into an organization. And I saw someone in the chat say, well, if apprentices can solve the issue, why do you need grads? I think for me, again, it's another lens of diversity and experience. So much is the same way I wouldn't expect people that come into our workforce at an experience level to come in all having the same experience or all via the same route. The same is true. We want a mix of people with a mix of experiences and a mix of skills. And I think having both programs for us really facilitates that.
Thanks, Mark. Martin, can I just come to you for a moment just to reflect on this point about apprentice versus grad? Because I think the latest statistics have been published showed there was something like 700,000 apprentices. Can we compare the volumes and perhaps also the myth about everyone should get on a degree apprenticeship versus go to university, which I know you've got perspectives on. Can you just come back on that?
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, pre-pandemic, the government had a target of 500,000 new apprenticeship starts each year. And if you look at the number of graduates coming out of university, that's now topped 400,000 for the first time. So that would suggest a similar supply of both graduates and apprentices. But the devil's in the detail because within the apprenticeships, the largest group are in fact the over 25s, not 16 to 18-year-olds, not 19 to 24-year-olds. So the impression that apprenticeships are for school leavers or for those just starting out on their career, that doesn't always translate in reality. And there are lots of career changes or indeed existing members of staff who are being retrained within organisations, all of which is a very good use of apprenticeships. But it does mean the number of apprenticeships open to school leavers and college leavers is smaller than people might imagine. And then if you drill down to 18-year-old school leavers coming off out of sixth form, having done A-levels, the numbers are really quite quite different. We've got about 300,000 school leavers each year who go either straight to university or via a gap year. And if you compare that with the numbers who choose to do a higher or degree apprenticeship, for the most recent year, those figures are still around the 4,000 mark. So it's almost a 100-to-1 ratio. So it's often talked about as a fork in the road: turn left for university, go right for a higher or degree apprenticeship. But in reality, we've got nearly 100 times as many choosing to go to university. And that's still part of the legacy that Tony Blair started, 20 years ago, setting his target that 50% of school leavers should go off and do a degree. So we do have, I think in reality, something of an oversupply of graduates, and certainly in terms of recent years, it's fantastic to see so many higher and degree apprenticeships being offered, levels 4 to 7 for those who are leaving school with A levels, but there just aren't enough opportunities at the moment to get to anywhere near parity. So I think there is a very high demand for those opportunities, but there just aren't enough places available nationally to fulfil the number of sixth formers who'd like to do it. So I think there's a long way to go before we're going to see parity in the eyes of parents or school leavers. It's really encouraging, though, that employers are treating both routes as equally important and delivering different things for their organisations.
Fabulous. Thanks very much, Martin. Jill, we've been very quiet and at risk of Edward being let off the hook. Have we got any questions on social mobility that we can put to the Social Mobility Commission?
Well, not explicitly, but there was the question about how do people measure and what recommendations can be made. So I think on social mobility, I know that's been a difficult one, and it was a difficult one for people completing the questionnaire. So I think it would be interesting to hear further about the measures.
Brilliant. So Edward, you and I have discussed this previously, and Sharon made the point about she was using the word child. Can you just elaborate a little bit on the measures we use for social mobility and how you would recommend people moving forward with it?
Yes, certainly. So I think one thing that it came across as part of the audit was that regardless of whether it was an apprenticeship program or a graduate program or a large employer or a small employer, the social mobility data and the socioeconomic background data was kind of the lowest of the characteristics. And to say this isn't something unusual, this is from my experience of working with employers across all sectors, all different employers. It is often the case that data on socioeconomic background that employers hold on their workforce is often the lowest. So from our perspective, we do think that actually solving this data question and measuring socioeconomic background is the kind of key first step in understanding what an organisation needs to do and how it can improve socioeconomic background within their organisation. But one thing we do know is it's not straightforward, and working with employers, we know that it's actually a bit of a blocker. So the data question and the measurement is a blocker for embedding, trying to collect data on socioeconomic background. So one thing we did do, we looked into research. So we conducted research on accurately measuring socioeconomic background. So we worked with employers and academics to try and assist in finding the best kind of method to do that. So that was with employers and academics as well. So the guidance we kind of produced was looking at the most effective way to do it. And what we found out was that employers should use a key question when measuring socioeconomic background. So the key question that employers should use is what is the occupation of your main household earner when you were age 14? So that's what we term as the key question on social mobility. So we recommend using that question because it's the most accurate way to measure someone's socioeconomic background. But also in the testing, it was found to be it was the question which had the highest response rate from employers. So put that together with its accuracy, we do advise that that's the key question that employers should ask. So parental occupation at the age of 14. There's also, we list a few other questions that can be combined with the key question. So the other questions looking at if you were eligible for free school meals. So that's looking at extreme disadvantage, because only 11% of the population had free school meals. And the other question we advise is what was the type of school you went to between the ages of 11 and 16? So that's to understand whether or not you attended a state school or a private independent fee-paying school. So they're the kind of questions that we advocate employers to ask. But the one key question we do say is parental occupation at the age of 14. But I have already said this, but just to reiterate, it's something that's common in all sectors, in all employers, but actually the collection of socioeconomic background is just not as embedded as collection of other diversity characteristics. So if an organisation is having issues collecting that data, it's something, to be honest, that's normal, and it's something that we at the SMC are trying to work towards with our programme to try and improve that, and suggestions on it. Okay, what is the best method of collecting the data? Because I think, Sharon, you mentioned around collecting the data on existing employees and how they felt they just didn't feel comfortable divulging that information. And it is the case, because it's not embedded as collection on ethnicity or gender, employers aren't as comfortable disclosing the information. So it's something that we're trying to work towards overcoming.
Thank you ever so much. That's a very comprehensive answer, and I'm sure we're starting to get a good theme for a masterclass with our Employer Audit alumni as we're starting to call people moving forward. Jill, have we got any other questions or points?
We have. I should just say, Karima posted in chat, Karima from Thames Water, said we've only just started to measure, I'm assuming you're meaning on the social mobility side, and do it across programmes now and plan to roll out across the entire business. And Karima's very happy to share a copy of their questionnaire, if that helps. So she's going to email that to me. Yes, she says, on social mobility. So we can share that with everyone afterwards. So that would be really good. And whilst I was going to ask another question, but Harriet, I did see where you were from earlier on, Harriet, so forgive me, I can't quite remember, but would like to understand more about whether the social mobility research covers how we can improve reach and remove barriers to employing, encouraging better social mobility. Are there any key organisations people can work with? Sorry, that's another one for Edward, but because it follows on what you're talking about, I think it's quite good to cover that off.
Okay, brilliant. Edward, have you got a perspective on that question? So what can we do, and who can support companies learn and employers learn about how to embed social mobility in their thinking?
Yes, definitely. And it's also something during the process of developing the toolkit that came up, especially in relation to SMEs and how they could be involved with increasing socioeconomic diversity. So one thing I would say, especially if you're an SME, is partner with an organisation within your local area. So we worked with one network which is national but is based in Birmingham, which was the Bain Apprenticeship network. So it's local networks that can then connect you to essentially talent that you could then possibly employ on apprenticeship programs. So wherever you are in the country, basically understand what are your local networks that you could get involved in, because there are networks across the country and they do specialise in diversity, not just socioeconomic diversity, but all the characteristics that to get involved with. And it's something that SMEs as well, if they're struggling on direction, definitely look for local networks.
Excellent. Thanks, Edward. Jill, have we got any further questions?
Yeah, very different question from Andrew Churchill, who's saying, this is all really interesting and fascinating, but how can we use the report and the audit to influence government policy and encourage more employers to take on apprenticeship and graduate programmes?
Blimey, that's probably a question
That's one for you, Mark.
Yeah, I sense so. So what we've done really with the instigation of the audit is create a closed loop management on what we do, and the idea of the research now is that we take the key themes, in particular where employers are struggling, and we feed that back into government, and we've preempted some of those areas in our manifesto for skills, which we launched back in May, and we also pick off things which we push forward with our thought leadership pieces, and we mentioned one about credentialism, and not really linked to the core earn and learn activity, but we're working with 5% Club members on a piece around Kickstart and the benefits Kickstart has brought in terms of bridging that gap from education or long-term unemployment back into the workplace. So it's a great initiative. We want to see that move forward. I think for wider reassurance, and just so members are aware, we're blessed in that our founder, Leo Quinn, who is the group CEO of Balfour Beatty, for this last year has also been a member of the Build Back Better Business Council, which is a council of 20 plus major employers across the UK who are brought together for discussions with the Chancellor and the Prime Minister on issues around how we build back better, what we do post-pandemic, post-Brexit. But one of the themes that has dominated has been skills, and that was long before we had the national skills crisis and HGV piece. And Leo has been advocating in that Build Back Better Business Council a number of things. One of the things, though, with the audit, and Leo has been talking for quite a considerable time now about kite marking socially responsible employers, setting employers apart, and that really is the raison d'etre for the 5% Club. And he will go into the Build Back Better Business Council, who are meeting fortuitously next Wednesday, and he is going to advocate for schemes such as the employer audit. I'm not saying the employer audit is the only show in town, but it shows great research. And actually, he's going to hand across to the Prime Minister on that occasion a hard copy of the employer audit, so that the Prime Minister has in his hands an example of what we're talking about. And what we've done with the 5% Club is we're moving from an era where we talk about stuff based on anecdote or supposition to being backed up by data and evidence. And what I'm finding is government really respond to evidence. And as such, we're being invited now right into the heart of government, and the Department for Education, etc. And I'll be expanding a bit more on that in the coming months as some of those plans come to fruition. But I think where we are is we're no longer a pedestrian in this activity, not that we ever were. We're right at the core of it, and we really are pushing the government agenda and trying to shape policy. And you guys who are participating, giving us the evidence, giving us the ideas, are really helping take that forward. So hopefully that's some kind of reassurance. And we lean on the membership through the audit, through our advisory panel, and through our steering group to get those contemporary perspectives. So hopefully that answers the question. So Jill, have we got any further questions?
We have. I'm going to group some comments. I think it's more people have made comments about the audit and wondering about other aspects to it and things we might do in the future. So Norma from the Ministry of Defence has said she's really interested in understanding if there are links identified between programmes being undertaken in particular sectors and diversity. Joe at Balfour Beatty said, yeah, some qualitative data would be really great as the audit matures. Andrew at MBDA, picking up on something Edward was saying about local networks and so on, adding in some data on the talent pipeline organisations people are using, or platforms such as Work Experience, Outreach, Movement to Work. Really interested to understand more around that. Nicola from Seddon said, in future, could the audit ask reasons why apprentices and graduates don't complete their programmes? Be really interesting to have a shared understanding or commonalities on that. And Matt from Baltic was saying, yeah, it would be really interesting to understand what type of apprenticeship graduate schemes are being undertaken. For example, percentages around tech and IT, and in terms of where people plan to invest in the future in terms of areas such as tech and IT. So there's a whole sort of range of things around the audit and areas we might develop and expand on. And I don't know whether that's something that Martin wants to comment upon as the research expert, and where we've started this year and where we might go with this.
So I think that's a fantastic set of questions. I think, this is our pilot year. We launched the audit. Jill, I and Martin sat with towels on our heads in the dark days of the second lockdown, working out what we would discuss. And we took a punt, and we feel we're in the right space. And the driver we had for that was based on feedback that the approach should be non-judgmental, easily completed, and provide maximum value for people and not be expensive. But as we evolve it moving forward, we'll take on board these comments. But Martin, perhaps, as Jill suggests, over to you as our research director for the programme.
Well, Mark, I'd echo all of that. And I think the really exciting thing is when we were talking about this originally, we were looking essentially at a 4 or 5 year plan where we start relatively small. We get the key themes in at the very beginning, but gradually build on that. I think you quite rightly said that we want to keep this as straightforward as possible for employers to enter, but equally it would be very useful to add in more rich layers of information as things evolve. So I think the way things are likely to move over the next few years is that the core data we've measured, those 5 pillars that we've looked at for this year, I think they will remain, but I think we'll be adding in supplementary questions and more detail. And the really exciting thing is if we get more employers taking part, we can then start doing some of that benchmarking within individual sectors. At the moment, there are perhaps only 2 or 3 key players in some of those sectors at the moment. So it's very difficult to make comparisons between the sectors. But as those numbers grow, it means we could do a profile, for example, for professional services versus retailers versus construction employers to see whether there are fundamental differences, as I think we suspect there are, between those different approaches to employment and different challenges, depending on the business area that people are in.
Thanks, Martin. So I think, great summary there that anything's possible with the audit, but we want to keep it pure to the principle of easily completed, not too costly, non-judgmental. And that's the point we'll move forward with. And it will iterate. But thanks for the comments. And we will be coming out for further suggestions or improvements or areas as we do the quality assurance on this year's programme. So thanks for that question. Jill, I'm just conscious of time, but are we getting close to peaking on the questions? Or
we've probably got 5 more minutes, Mark, to questions. Okay. Again, it's lots of comments, but I think some really interesting points. So forgive me again if I summarise and if I don't get around to everyone's question. But Nicola at Seddon was saying, can construction companies in the 5% Club get together actively, encourage others in our sector? How do we get our supply chain to employ apprentices? There's only, she can't employ anymore, but how can other businesses encourage people in the supply chain? Alex at Keepmoat says sharing the EVI is a good idea. Richard at Warren Services said we need to find a way to encourage more SMEs to join the 5% Club, although we are 60% SME, I'm glad to say, and help them afford to do the audit. And I think it's important to point out that when Mark, Martin and I sat down to think about the audit, we were determined that there had to be a big presence of SMEs as part of this, otherwise it wouldn't be meaningful. So there's lots of comments there about coming together and trying to work together to get more people to join, more people to be in the audit. Steve Latcham at Mastec says, with a mandatory focus on corporate social responsibility and localised economy recovery, in all government procurements, he's interested to hear about how 5% Club has seen an upsurge in activity and any best practice that's been identified. Their business is focused on graduates and apprentices for digital and IT. Now, in terms of government procurement, we did do a social value event a couple of months ago, Mark, didn't we? So it might be worth checking that out, and I can post that. I don't know if anyone else wants to touch on government procurement, corporate responsibility, if it's anything. Mark Lomas, I'm guessing, is the key expert on that area. I don't know, Mark, if you want to do a couple of words around that.
Sure. How do you get organizations in your supply chain to prioritize apprenticeships and earn and learn? You make it a contractual requirement. That's the short answer to it. So at HS2, we have contractual requirements around diversity, inclusion, but also skills and employment education, which is about sort of getting that next generation in. But depending on the size of contract, we will have, you either have X amount of apprentices per 3 million pounds of contract, or, for example, 4% of your workforce on this contract will be made up of apprentices. I think where some organizations are pretty weak in that area is they might write it into the specification, but it's not a contractual requirement, and they don't monitor it out at the end. So the key is having that procurement model which allows you to do that. And we've been more than delighted to share what we have in our contracts, if that would help others to do the same. I think the key point though is you make it an explicit expectation of performing the contract, and it is a contractual requirement. It's not a nice to have. It is, you will do this. And of course, once people get going on it, they then find all sorts of benefits to their business, and they're really glad they started. So yes, if you've got a large supply chain, or you've got high value contracts that you're going to hand out to businesses that work with you, then yes, make them change. Put that effort into contractualizing it, and it's a sort of a virtuous cycle.
Thanks, Mark. And I think it's interesting. Richard and Nicola have also raised that point about how can we encourage people. And I think the 5% Club has historically been a UK national organisation, but I can see that we can dive into the regions, and we can work with big players in a region and supply chains and really shape the agenda. So if people want to invite us to supply chain conferences or whatever, or there are initiatives locally that you want to get us involved in where you feel things like the Employer Audit can add value, then please reach out to us. We'd be delighted to support. And I know we've been in discussion with both Nicola and Richard about that. Jill, any final points or questions?
Some other very specific questions about the audit, which perhaps we'll go back to separately to people rather than here, and just some other really positive comments, and lots of people contributing to the chat. An idea about a network for best practice sharing and masterclasses for members. So there's something for us to take away, Mark, and think about. But otherwise, I think we're getting to the close of our event. So hopefully we've covered off all the questions, and if not, we'll go back to you directly.
Great, thanks, Jill. And I notice we are the 5% Club, and we've now lost nearly 17% of our participants. They hung in there all through the announcements, but we've been going now for nearly 2 hours. So I think it's probably time to draw stumps on that. So before I hand back to Jill for the final thanks, I'd just like to thank the panel members for a rich discussion there and your contributions. I think you might have talked yourselves into hopefully supporting us moving forward with some masterclass activity. No pressure, Edward. We'll be in touch. So we'll explore that in a bit more detail. Jill, are you coming onto camera for this final piece, or are you staying as the voice?
Just to say a massive thank you to everyone who's joined us today. A thank you to the 21 people who came forward to do the sound bites. A bit of housekeeping to say that the main contacts in your organisation have been sent the research report, they've been sent your award logo, they've been sent media collateral. So please do touch base with them, and please promote your award. And it's not just about promoting it today. This is an award for a year. So let's keep on pushing the great achievements that have been gained today. One last small bit of housekeeping. We are hoping to have our 8th of December event at the House of Lords, a reception, COVID allowing. And again, the methodology for your organisation to send 2 people along to that has been sent to the main contact on the audit. But if anyone's got any queries, please just drop me an email. I'll be more than happy to go through things and double check things for you. That's it.
Great, thanks, Jill. So that brings us to the end of today's symposium, which I do hope you've enjoyed, and thanks for the supportive comments as people leave in the comments. We do hope you enjoyed the events, and like I say, you've gained some important insights that you can take back into the workplace and change your approach and perhaps build on some of the things you've learned today. So from all of us at the 5% Club, thank you for your time and participations. And as Jill said, restrictions permitting, we look forward to seeing at least some of you at the celebratory reception on the 8th of December.